If I placed a bowl of white rice, a baked potato, and a cup of coffee in front of you, which one do you think spikes blood sugar the most? Take a guess for a second. Most people immediately say rice. Some people blame potatoes. But almost nobody ever suspects the coffee. And yet, for millions of people trying to lose weight or fix their metabolism, the biggest spike might actually be coming from their morning coffee routine. Sounds crazy, right? But once you understand how starch and liquid carbohydrates work inside the body, the answer becomes much more interesting. So today, we're going to settle this properly. Rice versus potato versus coffee. Which one actually spikes blood sugar the most? And more importantly, which one is the biggest problem for insulin resistance? But first, you need to understand something most people never learn about carbohydrates. Both rice and potatoes are mostly made up of starch. Starch is simply chains of glucose molecules linked together. When you eat starch, your digestive enzymes break those chains apart and release glucose into your bloodstream. As glucose enters the blood, blood sugar rises. When blood sugar rises, insulin rises, and if insulin spikes frequently over time, that's what eventually leads to insulin resistance. But here's where things get interesting. Not all starch behaves the same way. White rice, especially varieties like jasmine rice, digests very quickly. That means glucose enters the bloodstream rapidly and blood sugar spikes faster. Potatoes can also spike blood sugar, especially when eaten hot. But potatoes contain something rice has much less of resistant starch. Resistant starch resists digestion in the small intestine. Instead of turning into glucose quickly, it moves into the large intestine and feeds beneficial gut bacteria. But here's the part most people never hear about. When potatoes are cooked and then cooled, some of their starch actually transforms into resistant starch, which means the exact same potato can produce a completely different blood sugar response. A hot baked potato spikes glucose quickly, but a potato that's been cooked and cooled in the fridge causes a much smaller spike. The same effect happens with rice too. Cook it, cool it overnight, reheat it the next day, and the blood sugar impact changes meaningfully. But there's another factor that matters even more than the type of starch. It's how these foods are eaten in real life. Most people are not eating rice or potatoes alone in a lab, they're eating meals. And meals change everything. If you eat a bowl of rice by itself, blood sugar spikes quickly. But if that same rice is eaten after protein, healthy fats, and fiber, digestion slows down. Glucose then enters the bloodstream more gradually. Protein and fat act as a buffer, spreading glucose absorption out over time. So the real problem is often not rice or the potato itself. It's isolated starch eaten in large amounts with nothing to slow it down. But here's where the conversation gets even more interesting. Because rice and potatoes aren't even the biggest problem in many people's morning routine. Coffee might be. Now, before you panic, black coffee itself is not necessarily bad. In fact, coffee contains compounds that can actually improve metabolism and insulin sensitivity. But the real problem is what people add to their coffee. So let's rate the most popular coffee choices from a metabolic perspective. First is the oat milk latte. This drink has become extremely popular because it's marketed as a healthy plant-based choice. It sounds clean, it's dairy-free, it's trendy, but metabolically, oat milk is basically liquid starch. During processing, enzymes break down oat starch into simple sugars like maltose. Maltose actually has a higher glycemic index than table sugar, which means an oat milk latte can spike blood sugar very quickly, especially on an empty stomach. You're essentially drinking a glucose delivery system before you've eaten anything. Oat milk lattes get a metabolic rating of 3 out of 10. Next up is bulletproof. Coffee, very popular in the keto world. This is coffee blended with butter and MCT oil. When used during intermittent fasting, it provides stable energy and keeps insulin low. But the problem happens when people drink it alongside a full breakfast. In that case, it simply adds hundreds of extra calories the body doesn't need. Used with fasting, bulletproof coffee gets a 7 out of 10, added on top of a big breakfast. It drops to a 4 out of 10. Now let's talk about plain black coffee. Black coffee can actually support metabolism and improve insulin sensitivity. But timing matters. Drinking strong coffee right after waking up, when cortisol is already high, can overstimulate the nervous system. That's why many people feel energized briefly, then crash hard later in the morning. Waiting 60 to 90 minutes before your first coffee makes a noticeable difference. Black coffee, used properly, gets a 7 out of 10. But there's one category that may actually be worse than oat milk. Zero sugar flavored syrups. People assume no sugar means no metabolic effect. But your body doesn't only respond to calories, it also responds to taste signals. When your brain detects an intensely sweet flavor, it sometimes releases insulin in anticipation of incoming glucose. This is called the cephalic phase insulin response. So even without real sugar, these syrups can still influence insulin signaling. Zero sugar syrups get a metabolic rating of 2 out of 10. So when you look at the full picture, the real problem isn't just rice. It isn't potato, and it isn't even coffee itself. The real problem is the pattern. Large portions of fast-digesting carbs, liquid sugars, meals without protein, fat, or fiber. Those patterns create repeated insulin spikes throughout the day. And over time, that's what leads to insulin resistance. Now there is one very common breakfast food that spikes blood sugar even faster than rice or potatoes, and millions of people eat it every single morning thinking it's healthy. Watch the next video on this channel to find out what it is. And subscribe to Dr. Keto Lifestyle for more science-based strategies to fix your metabolism. Because these small daily habits can make a huge difference in your long-term health.